Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to LTL Podcast. It is July 25th, 2023, and this is episode 40. And we are going to talk some Idaho, and we are going to talk some Bryan Kohberger today. Yes, the big news today. We didn't hear anything yesterday, but we heard some news today, and we have some new legal documents to get into. We're going to roll through the show. We're going to see what the lawyer Peter Tragos has to say about this. And I have some spots from Court TV and News Nation chiming in on the Bryan Kohberger alibi. It's like word salad. It's word salad. It's Ann Taylor word salad. It's like playing, what's that game that we used to play with? Words with Friends. It's like Words with Friends. But we're going to get into all that tonight for all of you. And before we get into the main subject of the show, I want to do this. I want to apologize to my audience yesterday. I ended the stream abruptly. It was not professional. And I will make sure that that never happens again on the LTL podcast. And I want to say that I appreciate all of you for reaching out to me and giving me emails, leaving comments on my page in support. And LTL podcasts cannot go without you. You are the people that make this podcast go around. You are YouTube. And I appreciate every single one of you that come into this chat during the live shows, leave comments on my videos, watch the replays, put up with my bullshit, listen to my stories, see my tears, feel the pain both together, have happy times together. But you all make LTL podcasts go around. And I cannot thank you all enough. The love from the community here that we have built around this channel, and we truly all love being here. My absolute dream is to make this podcast my full-time job someday. I want to be doing this. I feel that I need to do this for the rest of my life, or as long as YouTube will be around. So I'm going to keep practicing my craft. I'm going to keep doing what I can do, in my outside life here, away from work, to make this podcast be the best true crime podcast ever on YouTube. I promise you, I will work hard and do that. But with that being said, I want to move on to the show here and get into the main topic. Let me just bring up this article here from Fox News. From Fox News, we have a new article here that states Bryan Kohberger might claim an alibi in the Idaho murder case, court filing reveals. Lawyers for the Idaho murder suspect also said they have evidence corroborating he said he was at a location other than the crime scene. Idaho murder suspect Bryan Kohberger might rely on an alibi during his upcoming trial, according to a recent court filing in criminal defense attorney John Henry Brown, who represented serial killer Ted Bundy. Kohberger, 29, who is standing silent. He stood silent yesterday. He pled the fifth. He stood silent in the case accusing him of a fatal stabbing. 4 University Idaho students on November 21st, 2022, reiterated his right to silence on a Monday filing, responding to the state's demand to present an alibi. It's closing in. The walls are closing in. The truth is now starting to be there on the wall, in my opinion. If this man has an alibi, why is he not standing up and screaming at this very moment? Why is he not screaming or talking through his lawyer of his innocence? We have not heard the word innocent in this case. In his defense, we heard exoneration. We cannot wait to be exonerated. We have not heard anything of innocence. You all need to wake up and see what's going on here. The writing is on the wall in this case. Don't believe the lies. Don't believe the bullshit. We get the straight facts here on LTL Podcast. The suspect defense team says it continues investigating and preparing his case. His lawyer also said that they have evidence corroborating the suspect at a location other than the crime scene of 1122 King Road in Moscow, in an off-campus house where 3 or 4 victims lived when the murders occurred on November 13, 2022. His attorney also anticipates the cross-examination of witness produced by the state and calling expert witnesses during the trial. I have said this for a long time. You can go back and watch the podcast. I said, and I call it the O.J. Simpson defense. Mark my words, the O.J. Simpson defense. What Ann Taylor and her team are going to do is attack the police, attack the DNA evidence, attack the way that this evidence was collected in this case. They're trying to make this crime go away and make it look like it is law enforcement's fault. Mark my words. You are going to see this. I'm sure they're studying the O.J. Simpson case now to prepare for this. But there's a problem. There is a huge problem. They don't have the dream team. They don't have Cochran. They don't have Bailey. They don't have Shapiro. It's not going to work. We know the writing on the wall. It's becoming very clear. This is word salad. It's word salad. Brown said that the filing is just proving notice that the defense might rely on an alibi. Might rely on an alibi. Might rely on an alibi without the defendant testifying. Let me get to the super chat really quick. A in Mini says, "You rock, Bryan. Thanks for your dedication to the channel. That gives us all an outlet we just need. Keep doing you, man." Thank you so much. I appreciate your contribution to the channel. We're going to solve this case. Believe me, we're going to do it together. We're going to do it together. But the writing on the wall is becoming clearer. It goes on to say, "My guess is that the cell phone data may try to put the defendant in a different place, not close to the murder scene," he said. "Alibi is an affirmative defense, so notice to the state is required." I guarantee you that they're going to use the time where his cell phone went off and when it turned on, and they're going to try to put him in a different place. We know the truth. We know the truth. The writing is on the wall. Idaho and other states require criminal defendants to give notice to the state of an alibi defense, the attorney explained. When the government calls experts to talk about cell towers and location, I just said it. I'm going to be honest with you. I haven't even fully read this article. I already know where this is going to go. When the government calls experts to talk about cell towers and the locations of the cell phones and things like that, then perhaps the defense is going to cross-examine those experts on cell phone information to establish the cell phone was somewhere else, is my guess. They're going to talk about the time that his cell phone went off. That is going to be their defense, and they're going to say that he wasn't in or around that house. Kohberger, a former criminology PhD student at Washington State University in a nearby Pullman, Washington, is charged with 4 counts of murder and 1 count of burglary after he allegedly stabbed 20-year-old Xander Knodel, 20-year-old Ethan Chapin, 21-year-old Kaylee Gonzalez, and 21-year-old Madison Mogan with a K-bar knife in the early morning hours of November 12, 2022. Investigators determined that the phone registered to Kohberger pinged at the crime scene between 3 and 5 a.m. on November 13th, and then again around 9 a.m., roughly 3 hours before police said they received a 911 call reporting the murders, according to the affidavit filed in January. The suspect also apparently visited the King Road residence where the murders took place right off University of Idaho campus at least a dozen times prior to the brutal murders, according to authorities. Kohberger was arrested in late December 2022. His trial had been scheduled to begin on October 2nd, which I don't think it's going to happen, and could take up to 6 weeks. Prosecutors are seeking the death penalty Prosecutors are seeking the death penalty. You don't just roll the death penalty on the table like some dice thinking that you're going to hit snake eyes. I'm telling you, we have not heard all of the evidence in this case, and we will hear more when and if this gets to trial. I'm telling you, it's going to be the O.J. Simpson defense. Okay, let's look at some legal documents. First of all, there's going to be an evidentiary items hearing on August. I almost said October. I'm thinking the trial already. On August 2nd, 2023. God, YouTube, you just love censoring me, don't you? Okay. 1 p.m. Pacific, and there will be a hearing there. So that will be on the docket. Okay, let's look at the alibi. Now, I know you all looked at this. This is the first time that I'm actually getting a chance to look at it today. I glazed over it just before I came onto the show, but let's take a look here. Let me just reposition myself. I'll go to the smaller. That's a little better. Let me widen this. Okay, it comes now. Bryan C. Kohberger by and through his attorney of record, Ann C. Taylor, public defender, and hereby files notice in response to the demand of alibi and in compliance with Idaho Code 19-519 and Idaho Criminal Rule 12.1. Mr. Kohberger notes that Idaho Code 19.519 preserves his constitutional right to silence as well as to testify on his own behalf. Mr. Kohberger stands firm with his constitutional right as well as his statutory recognition of that right. Noteworthy is that the alibi indicates a line of proof which the defendant attempts to show that he cannot have committed the crime of which he is accused because he was elsewhere at the time. A defendant denial of charges against him does not constitute an alibi, but as soon as he offers evidence that he was at some other place other than where the crime of which he's charged was committed, he is raising the alibi defense. Mr. Kohberger's defense team continues investigating and preparing for his case. Evidence corroborating Mr. Kohberger's being at a location other than King Road address will be disclosed pursuant to discovery and evidentiary rules, as well as statutory requirements. It is anticipated this evidence may be offered by way of cross-examination of witnesses produced by the state, as well as calling expert witnesses. I think that they are going to have a major uphill battle in this case. All right, let's look at this state's motion to reconsider order staying from speedy trial. If you guys are over on Tanya's stream, she probably went through these and read these, but let's look through them here. Again, I glazed over them really quick. Comes now that Bryan C. Kohberger by another attorney, J. Weston Lawsden, Chief Deputy Litigation, hereby submits the following response to the state motion of reconsidered order of staying time for speedy trial. The state's motion is concerned only with Mr. Kohberger's statutory right to a speedy trial, though it never makes that plain. To be clear, there is no way to read a partial waiver of constitutional right as a full waiver. Other jurisdictions use partial waiver. I mean, to me, it just sounds like they're slowing down the process again. I'm not going to go into this. I mean, you all know what's going on here. It's just slowing the process down. All right, let's pull up this here. Let's see what News Nation has to say.
All right, let's bring in now Sarah Azari, News Nation legal contributor and a criminal trial attorney. Sarah, thank you so much for your time. So hearing this, it kind of brings to mind the OJ defense, right? The evidence was planted. The police were out to get OJ. Is that what the defense is trying to say
Yes.
here?
Yes.
Yeah, Nicole, good to be with you. No, it actually isn't. This
Yes.
is all coming from the prosecution's responsive paperwork that's really hyperbole and fodder for the media. What the defense has said is that his DNA was placed at the scene, not planted. And this is not a matter of semantics, it's a matter of science. Because the only DNA, Nicole, at the scene was this touch DNA on the knife sheath. Touch DNA.
This makes absolutely no sense to me. 0 cents. They would have had to known about this guy months before, a year before. If she's going to go down the line that the law enforcement framed this guy, it's statistically impossible. They would have to pluck some random person out of a random place, have it out for this guy, get his DNA some way, place it on some knife sheath, put it next to 2 murdered people in a crime scene. It makes absolutely no sense. I don't. It's the craziest thing that I've heard in my entire life. It statistically cannot happen.
DNA, as we all know who do the job, is the most unreliable type of DNA because typically it's transferred. And so what the defense is really saying is that it doesn't tell us that Bryan Kohberger was there. It doesn't tell us how his DNA got on that knife sheath. And really the larger picture of this is that there's been this point of contention about the investigative genetic genealogy material that the prosecution does not want to produce, that the defense wants to be discovered. And so that touch DNA, because it was part of what ID'd Kohberger, goes to those materials as well. So again, I think this is about the defense saying it was transfer DNA, touch DNA, and the prosecution trying to make it to be some sort of a red herring, like, oh, you know, they're claiming it's rigged. But is it possible that law enforcement plants evidence? Absolutely. It's happened in my cases. And this was a very high profile case. There was pressure to make an arrest. It's not implausible that things could have been planted. It's just not what the defense is saying here.
So, Sarah, I want to expand on that a little bit. So the defense, there's this matter of semantics, placed versus planted. But then what about the video evidence?
Exactly.
He was allegedly caught, or at least his vehicle was allegedly caught on surveillance video. There's cell phone data that places his cell phone in the area, right? Is it telling that the defense team is not addressing any of those issues? At least not right now.
Yeah, not right now. Exactly. Yeah. And no, because there's so much, I don't know how many terabytes of discovery already produced. The defense is still going through it, consulting with experts. And remember that in a circumstantial case, the prosecution is building their case, and the defense's job is to dismantle that case. And so it's not about any one sort of piece of evidence that we can just focus on out of context. We have to look at each piece and the reliability of each piece. So with respect to the cell phone pings, was it reliable that his phone was pinged by these towers? I can tell you I've had clients who were over 20 miles away from the tower that was pinged, and their phone got pinged. The car, there was problems with the identification of the car. First it was 1 year, then it was a different year. And, so when the jury sees this case, they're going to have to take a look at really the reliability of the totality of all of these pieces of evidence. And if I just may address what Alex said about the alibi, Nicole, it is not extraordinary that he doesn't have an alibi. It's in fact very normal that he doesn't have an alibi. How many of us can produce receipts that we were in bed at 4 a.m. on a specific night or morning?
I can almost guarantee you this. Let me ask you guys a question and tell me, put a 1 in the chat. Put a 1 in the chat. If you go to bed listening to music, a podcast, a YouTube video, whatever, playing a game, reading some text, tell me how many people in the chat, throw 1 up there, go to sleep in bed with their music playing, a video playing, a podcast to put them to sleep at night, and you wake up next to you with your phone next to you in bed. I guarantee you every single person in this chat will have a 1 next to him. So if this guy was home at his house during those hours and he was home in bed, not out at King Road doing what we know happened there, then his cell phone would ping either off his Wi-Fi in his apartment or near a cell tower at that time in the morning. So this is the craziest thing I've ever heard, to say, oh, well, we don't know where we are at 4 o'clock in the morning. My phone is next to my head every night that I fall asleep. It's probably not a good thing that it's there, because it's transmitting microwaves through my head. But I go to bed every night listening to either a podcast or a YouTube video to put myself to sleep. Yeah, look at all the ones. All right, let's keep moving on here. Let's see. Lou, thank you so much for the $10 super chat. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Can't. And so what he's doing is essentially saying, at trial, we will show you that through cross-examination, that the prosecution has not been able to prove that Kohberger was at the Kings Road home and that he committed the murders. Essentially, they're saying we don't have an alibi yet, but we can show you that he wasn't there through the process of trial.
So Stuart, to expand on that a little bit, so they have not formally submitted this alibi. They're asking for this extension on doing it. But what does that say to potential jurors who, have yet to be seated, who more than likely, are still seeing all of this coverage right now, just like the rest of us are? Could that be detrimental?
And I'm going to get a video up. I'm going to play a video in a minute here of people that want to question the DNA evidence. And we'll hear from an actual DNA expert that will tell you that it's statistically almost near impossible what everybody is saying in this case. A DNA expert is saying that. So we're going to play that here in a minute. I got another one here before I go. It's going to be live now from Fox. We'll play that video as well. We're going to do the evidence video, and then we're going to round out the rest of the podcast with Lawyer No. He streamed this afternoon. I want to hear what he says about the legal documents, and then just his opinion on this case as well. So sit back, relax, let's have some fun. I'm back with a bang. I'm fired up, and LTL will push on
until down the road.
I think everything about this case is detrimental to eventually a jury that's going to be seated in the box, because I hope that those jurors are critical thinkers, that they're open-minded, that they believe in the presumption of innocence, and that they could just take what the evidence is in that courtroom and not what they've heard for all these months. It's not an easy job to do, but it's what they must do.
Thank you for watching. Go to News 8.
Wow, let's try to cut those off before they do that. All right, let's look here from Fox. This is from live now from Fox. Let's see what they got to say.
In the Idaho murders involving Bryan Kohberger, who's charged in those murders. And the latest in the investigation, Bryan Kohberger's defense team was required to submit an alibi on his behalf for the night that the 4 students at the University of Idaho were murdered. The deadline was Monday, but court documents show that Kohberger has chosen to remain silent. Let's now talk more about this and bring in defense
Put it in the
attorney
chat. Let us
Jacqueline
know.
Goodman.
We
Jacqueline,
want to hear.
help us understand what this means here, and thank you for being
That's
with
the thing. I'm not coming at you, but I'm just saying, this is the thing that I always hear. People always say, well, I don't think it's him. And then they sit there and they don't tell us, well, I see that in the comments on my videos. Well, I don't think it's him. It can't be him. Well, then who is it? Explain it to us. We want to hear. We want to know. So if you don't think it's him, let us know. Let's hear a valid point to who you think it is. I'm not calling you out. I'm not challenging you. I just want to hear your side of the story. Because I always hear that, in my comments. Oh, well, it couldn't have been him. He couldn't have done it. Well, then who was it? No one will ever explain that. I want to know everybody's frame of mind in this case. I want to know what they think.
With us, what does this mean that they're implying that there is an alibi, but they're not releasing it? Can you explain how this process works from here?
We don't want trials to be a complete ambush. We want to give notice with both sides giving each other a fair opportunity to meet the allegations. It is the prosecution's burden to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt, and it's the defendant's right to remain silent. And so we have to sort of, put those ideas together and find a common ground. So in Idaho, they do require that the defense give notice of an intention to bring an alibi defense. And so what the defense did in this case is they brought some information that they may, by their July 25th deadline, that they may bring an alibi defense, and by way of expert testimony, which we assume is going to be something like cell phone tower information, et cetera, or DNA information, et cetera, as well as cross-examination of the witnesses against Mr. Kohberger. So it is sort of they're striking a
200
balance
people in
between
here.
giving too much
We got
information and
96
actually
likes. So
saying
smash
there's
that
no way
like
that we're
button.
bringing
It's
an
free to
alibi
do
defense.
that.
But this is
I'm
a
going to give
fairly
away
early
some.
stage in a very,
I'm going to
very
give away
serious
some
capital murder
memberships tonight,
case. And
some
so that's not a
memberships.
surprising filing when
Let's
you
get
see
it up
that.
over 100.
Okay, so we have the court documents here, Jacqueline. So let's talk a little bit more about what it says. They say, quote, evidence corroborating Mr. Kohberger being at a location other than the King Road address will be disclosed pursuant to discovery and evidentiary rules, as well as statutory requirements. So let's say that Kohberger does have a legitimate alibi. Wouldn't that be easy information to submit to the court? Or how does the timeline, if at all, play a role here? Is it with them having to wait a little bit more time to submit an alibi or to make that information known? Does that have any sort of role in this when you look at the timeline as a whole, waiting longer as opposed to doing it right away?
Titanium built. Tanya in the
that's
house.
sort of it's burden shifting when you think about it in that way. It isn't the defendant's duty to say affirmatively, I was at this place or that place, although that is kind of the extreme idea of what an alibi is. But there's also this sort of gray area where it is, if you weren't the one that did this, then you were maybe by definition not in the home at the time of these 4 murders. You might have been someplace else. And if the evidence to the defense, investigators working on this, finds evidence that would indicate that it was not Mr. Kohberger who was in that home at that time, they could over time develop what amounts to an alibi defense. So it's sort of it's more of a continuum and less of an extreme.
Brittany just smashed the like.
Okay, sure.
Brittany just smashed the like.
How likely is it, in your opinion, that there is a valid alibi here, considering the evidence that we know has been brought forth so far, the cell phone evidence, the pings, his car being captured on footage, and then, of course, arguably the largest piece of evidence, his DNA being found on the knife sheath under...
I think they want that grand jury testimony. They want that grand jury testimony to look through. That's what they want. So they're slowing everything down so they can get all those transcripts and get everything all together so they can see things and put their case together. That's what they want. That's a good point. Rackmaster, they have to wait till they go through everything they stated to manufacture some kind of alibi. Absolutely. Purist says titanium built. All right, let's keep playing on here.
One of the victims' bodies. How likely is it that there could be a good, valid alibi here?
It's really hard to speculate. What we've seen and what's been in the news is clearly pointing to Mr. Kohberger being at the scene and having committed these murders. But in a case like this, you have evidence that's going to be admissible in court, and it's going to be subject to cross-examination and really sort of the sanitizing aspects of a trial so that we can get to the bottom of it. We know only a little bit. So if there is evidence that Mr. Kohberger himself was not present at the time, I mean, there are some gaps, let's face it, to the DNA evidence. There's no corroborating DNA evidence in his home or in the car, et cetera. So it isn't that I'm ruling out that something that is positive for the defense could change all of our opinions. But at least as far as we know so far and what the prosecution has told us, the evidence seems to point toward Mr. Kohberger, sure.
Okay, so Jacqueline, if we back up a little bit here, there are 2 surviving roommates from that night, one of which had told officials that she had seen a man she didn't recognize that night, and the description that she had gave officials at the time fit Kohberger. The reason I'm bringing this up now is that we know that previously the defense had...
So let me get this. Linda says, I think it's him, yes, and I'm going to get a lot of backlash here. I follow a couple of psychics and tarot readers, and they also see another. I know people don't believe some are fake, my opinion. Hey, whatever you need to do is right for you. I don't believe in a lot of that. I don't believe in that stuff, but if that's what you feel you believe, you follow, all good for that. It's all good. I respect you for putting that in the chat. I respect you for putting that in the chat, Linda, because I can see how you can get a lot of heat for that. So All right, let's keep
had
playing here.
subpoenaed one of the surviving roommates to appear in court because they believe she had information that could be exculpatory to the defendant. I'm curious as to how you think the surviving roommates could play a role in this trial, looking ahead to October 2nd. Do you think that they could potentially help Kohberger's defense?
Yeah, no worry.
Sure, help or hurt, definitely.
Listen,
but what we want to have is, because memory is so
brave to put it in
subjective,
here.
And it's also susceptible to suggestion, and it fades over time, and it's just imperfect. And so it's important for people to get their stories out in a way that is not affected by the way the question's asked, et cetera, or any of the news media. When someone is a suspect in a case, there is naturally a suggestion for someone that they're.
No, here's another thing too, is that I was seeing on Facebook today that, oh, you know, now everybody thinks that it's someone else in the house. So who would it be? It would be Bethany and Dylan Mortensen. Okay. Here's the logical thing that we have to think about. Do you not think that these two witnesses have been interviewed multiple times? They've had their phones downloaded. They've probably sat through multiple interviews. Do you not think that if it was someone else that is involved in this, that they would have been arrested already? We would have heard of another arrest. That's my opinion. So when everybody says, oh, everybody was cleared too quickly, they can always go back and reinvestigate things, people. A case is always an ongoing investigation. Even through a court trial, you can present more evidence if you come across something. This is the thing that people don't understand in trials. I'm not a trial expert. I'm not saying that. But a case can be investigated all the way up until the time there is a verdict. You can present evidence. If something comes up to help your client, if something comes up to prosecute that client, you can bring that forward and admit it into evidence. But these people in the house have gone through multiple interviews. They would have been arrested already.
They're thinking, well, this is the person the police think did it. It must be him. And that's really a subconscious thing going on in the minds of these witnesses. And so it's not unusual for the defense attorneys to be asking for these witnesses to be interviewed close in time to the time of the event, so that you can preserve any possibility of reasonable doubt at the time.
Okay, so right now the trial is scheduled to begin on October 2nd. We also know the prosecutors here will be seeking the death penalty with this. What happens between now and then, and how likely or unlikely is it that we could see that trial date get pushed back?
It's very likely that the trial date gets pushed back. In
October.
And what you're seeing is a precursor to what you're likely to see more of, which is more investigation, more work from experts to see whether the prosecution's theories hold up when you play them out. And so you're getting discovery, which is evidence that may be admissible in trial from both sides, and the exchange of that information, the information and reports from experts. And
oh, I'm going to tell you right now, that little video that someone put up, well, I already got my YouTube copyright complaint submission, so don't worry, it's going to get taken down soon.
Investigators as this goes on. And so as it develops, both sides learn new things and give that information to the other side. Another side gets that information, does with it what they will, and gives them their response.
5.37
time, and in a case where his very life is hanging in the balance, lawyers and experts and investigators are going to be quite thorough, hopefully. And that's what we're seeing here, that they're going to be very, very thorough when they look at all of this evidence. And so that October date is very likely to get pushed back.
Yeah. Well, Jacqueline, we appreciate you joining us here to help us understand everything that happened today or this week, this update that we're just learning about this week. Is there anything else here that we may not have addressed entirely that you would like to add on to, or any final thoughts here?
You know, I think we've pretty well covered it, but here's the thing. It's very early on, and Idaho is kind of an outlier when it comes to the deadlines for when the defense has to tell whether they're going to give this alibi defense. And so I think it's kind of an important aspect of the case that the defense lawyers said we may, and it would happen through the cross-examination of witnesses against Mr. Kohberger and through potentially expert witnesses. So they're making sure to preserve Mr. Kohberger's right to remain silent and to have all of the panoply of safeguards that are attendant to him in these kinds of cases without losing their ability to put on an alibi defense that occurs. And so that's kind of the way that defense lawyers in Idaho are dealing with that early deadline. And that's just an interesting aspect of this case to me. But it can change as time goes on. These lawyers are going to be amending their filings as they get closer
I think
to
the
trial.
X thing is just a little
Yeah, Jacqueline, this
joke.
could get
I think it's going to turn
complicated,
back
so we
to
do
Twitter.
appreciate you joining us
I
here
think
to
he's
help
just
us further understand
roasting
all that
everybody.
is happening and what comes next from here. So thank you so much, as always, for joining us here on Live Now from Fox.
All right, let's hear about the DNA from a DNA expert, the planted evidence. Okay, let's hear a DNA expert. So everybody in here that is doubting DNA and touch DNA evidence, let's hear it from an expert. Oh, let's drop the video. Oh shit, that was good. Nice transition. Nice transition, dude. All right, let's play it. Oh, let me turn the sound up.
Generator. It's a highly scientific tip, but it's still just a tip. So we
Just a
can
tip.
point law enforcement in the right direction with this
Just the
technique,
tip.
but they still have to perform their full investigation.
Genetic genealogy and how it was used in
Just
the
a
Idaho
tip.
4 murder investigation is becoming a major issue in the case against Bryan Kohberger. And now, court documents reveal Kohberger's defense may claim DNA on a knife sheath was planted. Thanks for joining us here on Law and Crime. I'm Anjanette Levy. We reported a few weeks ago that prosecutors asked the court to issue a protective order on the genetic genealogy information developed by the FBI using a DNA profile obtained from the snap of the knife sheath found on Maddie Mogen's bed. Kohberger faces the possibility of the death penalty if convicted of the murders of Mogen, Kaylee Gonsalves, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin last November. The defense wants to show how the FBI used DNA to create family trees that led them to Kohberger and his father. It's clear from reading court documents and from covering the case that law enforcement had very little to go on until genetic genealogy came into play. Kohberger's defense attorneys wrote in their objection that they want to see how many other potential suspects were overlooked. And they even suggested that Kohberger's DNA could have been planted. They wrote, what the state's argument asks this court and Mr. Kohberger to assume is that the DNA on the sheath was placed there by Mr. Kohberger and not someone else during an investigation that spans hundreds of members of law enforcement and apparently at least one lab the state refuses to name. Prosecutors have now responded to the defense's objection, writing, presumably then, defendant was attempting to show how the investigative genetic genealogy information is material to the preparation of his defense when he asserted that someone other than the defendant may have placed his DNA on the K-bar knife sheath. But the state is at a loss as to how that theory supports a claim that the IGG information is material to the preparation of his defense. In other cases, prosecutors haven't been forced to turn over the genetic genealogy information. I spoke with Cece Moore, an expert in the field, about this earlier this year.
The precedent that we've seen set is that this does not need to and should not be presented in court in front of a jury. So far, it's really been discussed in pretrial hearings, grand jury trial hearings.
Thank you, Susie.
If at all.
I appreciate
I've
you.
been on hold for dozens of
Said
cases to be an expert
I'm a
witness,
rock
and I've been
star.
canceled
Thank
in
you.
every single one because of the precedent that we're seeing set, because of the rulings the judges are making. Oftentimes when the defense tries to object to the genetic genealogy and they lose, which they have in every case so far, they end up doing a plea deal.
Kohberger's trial is currently set for October. Meanwhile, I spoke with Kristen Slaper,
This
an
is
expert
important.
in DNA
Let's
analysis,
listen.
who managed DNA analysis for years for Ohio's Bureau of Criminal
Let's
Investigations Crime Lab. I asked her about the possible claim that DNA was planted and the arguments over genetic genealogy.
What's important to remember is that, first of all, DNA on its own doesn't mean anything until you have a standard to compare. So what I mean by that is you could run DNA tests all day long, get profiles from someone or multiple people, and you don't really know what it means until you either put it into the CODIS database or you compare it to a standard that's submitted. So in a situation like this, where I hear that the claim is DNA is planted, I think it's important to remember that Bryan Kohberger was not known. Nobody knew who did this. And
Oh,
I think that's important because
I've done that
in order
before.
for something to be planted, it has to be a pretty, it's got to be pretty planned out to plant someone's DNA. You have to have their DNA, first of all. You have to have an item that their DNA is on and know that only their DNA would be found on it in order for a result to be produced the way that it was, for it to
That's called logic. That's logic.
be one person on this knife sheath, for it to be enough DNA that you could generate a profile from this, that you could put it into CODIS, that you could then go on to do genealogy. You have to have a decent amount of DNA for that. And so it has to be really carefully planned, I think, if you're going to plant someone's DNA. And then, like I said, not knowing who the person is when the DNA lab runs the test. The DNA lab is only generating what's there and what they have. And we always had a saying.
This is single-handedly the most important DNA video that I have seen made about this case so far. This is so clear-headed. It's so professionally well said. It's clear. You can understand it. This is great. This is great. It's a great video.
In the lab, that you either get the right answer or you get no answer, because you're working the evidence that gets submitted by the law enforcement agency. And sometimes you would get a profile and other times you wouldn't. So in my mind, to plant someone's DNA, I think it takes an awful lot of work. And I think it's a little bit too coincidental with all the other facts of the case. Not knowing the outcome, not knowing who did it. That's just my opinion.
So the state says, they had this.
We're at 145 likes. I got 270 in here right now. You guys can smash that like button and get this to 200 likes. It's free. Literally, to hit the like button, it is free. Let's smash that like button. Let's get this over 200 so we can get some more viewers in here.
Unknown DNA profile. As you mentioned, they didn't get a hit in CODIS. So they send it to
We
a private lab. There are a few private labs that will do this work for law enforcement. But then they hand it over to the FBI, and the FBI comes up with this SNP profile. It's a different type of profile from the STR used in the lab. And I think this can get very confusing for people who aren't familiar with this. So they hand it over to them, and then they build family trees based on the information that they are given. And then they kind of hone in on him. But the defense makes it sound like they may have overlooked other potential suspects.
So I think a couple of things on that. Yes, what we call a SNP profile or a SNP panel
162
is different from conventional
200.
DNA testing. Conventional DNA testing is looking at 20 or 21 locations, depending on which kit you use in the lab. And if you have that profile, you can directly compare it to a standard from a suspect. And you can see, does this exactly match this person or not? When it gets put into the CODIS database, the same question gets asked. Is this matching to someone either at the state level or at the national level in the CODIS database? In a situation like this, where you have a good enough amount of DNA and it's a single source profile, you then can go on to do the SNP testing. SNP testing is, if you've heard of the Human Genome
Smash
Project,
that like button and link
and
that
you've
DNA
heard that
so
they
we can find
sequence
you later.
someone's DNA, that's essentially what developing a SNP panel is. It's sequencing the DNA, and then it's looking at certain segments of the DNA and comparing it to people that may be similar or not. The origination of this type of testing was really intended for SNP testing, or to determine how similar someone's DNA was to their ancestors. So I submitted my sample to Ancestry, 23andMe, and they could tell me, okay, your DNA is very similar to people that live in Eastern.
So what device are you on, Deborah? Are you on a iPad or an iPhone? I think you have to be on a computer to join the memberships. If you want to join the membership, you go down there and hit the join button if you're on a desktop. My membership started at $1.99 a month. It's less than a cup of coffee. I really would appreciate the continued support. Let us know. Maybe we can guide you through that, Deborah. But we're gonna get to 200 likes here, and once we get to 200 likes, I'm gonna give out some memberships. That's what we do here in Massachusetts. We give memberships out.
In Europe, which I always knew. I always knew that I was Polish. And so, yes, my DNA most likely matches that. That's all SNP testing is doing. It's basically saying your DNA has a lot in common with someone else. And that in the situations of ancestry testing, it's populations from Eastern Europe or Ireland or wherever it's from. In a situation like this, they're taking that SNP panel that was developed at a private laboratory. And it's 700,000 locations on someone's DNA. They upload it in a very similar manner to uploading an STR profile or a normal profile to the CODIS database. They upload this SNP panel or SNP profile to these publicly available databases, and then ask the question of how related is the person who owns this profile, i.e. is the DNA from the knife sheath, how related is this person to somebody available in these databases? I think it's important to note that the databases are publicly available databases. So someone took the time to take their sample, their own profile, their own SNP panel, and upload it to say, where are my relatives? Who am I related to? I want to trace my own family tree. I want to see, my own background. So once that comparison, they take the SNP profile, they upload it to that database. Once that's done, the returns that come back are potential family members of this.
If you're asking like what a membership does, it gives access to all my members only lives and all my members only content. The way you get to that is you go to my homepage, scroll all the way down, and you see all members only content there. You can access all that. I try to do at least one members only informative stream in Hangouts once a week. I'm off tomorrow, so I'll probably have a morning warm up, and then we'll have the show at night.
Person, and the return can be, it could be a first cousin because of the relatedness and because of the DNA from the evidence profile looking very similar to the person in the database. Because of that, that's how they know the potential relatedness. So once they figure out who's in the database and they find out the identities of those people, again, those people have uploaded their sample. They have given their information. It's public. Once they figure that out, they then develop the family tree. So when you're talking about there could be other potential people, it's probably other relatives of that initial sample that got uploaded. The thing to remember is down the line, they eventually do a direct comparison back to that original DNA profile with 21 locations on it. And it's very discriminating. That profile, again, it's a one-to-one match. So even if there are other people in the genealogy database that look related,
right there, bro.
At the end of the day, they do that final comparison and it's a match.
I also asked Slaper about the prosecution's argument that the FBI...
This is the clearest explanation of this DNA evidence that I've heard. I urge every single person to watch this video, and I will drop the link. If you have it, if you can't follow along, you don't want to hear my stupid commentary over it, I'll drop the link. You can watch that later. But this is a very important interview. It is so clear and concise and so on point.
FBI doesn't keep reports on the genetic genealogy work performed
25
in this
more likes,
case.
and I'll give away
Prosecutors
some
say they
memberships.
don't have to turn that material over to the defense and that proper DOJ protocols were followed. Prosecutors cited another case in which the state was not ordered to turn over the information.
We're getting there.
I mean, my opinion is that I understand they don't want to turn it over because the people who are involved along the way, what I mean by that, the people who are in the database.
All right, let's do this.
They gave their stuff willingly, right? They uploaded their information willingly if the FBI used the publicly available databases, GEDmatch or Family Tree DNA, which it's everybody's understanding that those are the databases they should be using. So I think what they're trying to prevent is that there's people along the way who are related to Bryan Kohberger at the end of the day, that don't need to be harassed. They don't need to be questioned about their DNA because, again, remember, his DNA matches that DNA profile on the knife sheath. So
It's a Calvin Klein
there
show.
are private labs that are doing
my
this
two
type of
girlfriends.
testing, whether it's the SNP panel or
Yeah, I wish
the
I could hit 10,000
genealogist, and
tonight.
they are providing a report that shows exactly how they got to the answer that they got. So I'm not sure that it's required to turn it over, but at the same time, it probably would make
Thank
the
you,
case,
Michelle. I appreciate you.
open the doors for here's exactly
it
how they
too.
got to the answer that they got to. Understanding that I think they're trying to protect private citizens. But in full disclosure, my opinion is just show what you did and how you got there.
Typically, we've heard about genetic genealogy being used in cold cases. In this case, it was used in a newer case. Does Kristen Slaper believe investigative genetic genealogy will be used in newer cases in the future where other leads have been exhausted?
I think that this is the way some of these cases are going to go, with the understanding
I love to hear that,
the
Angel.
genealogy
Good stuff.
Labs and the
We
companies
need
that
LTL
have
podcast to grow
those databases,
10,000
they set
subscribers and more,
parameters for the
beyond.
type of case that is going to be allowed to be searched
We're
in
gonna make
those.
this the best damn true
Also,
crime
those
YouTube
companies that
channel
have those
on
databases,
the planet.
they require people to opt
Me.
in to be available to search for law enforcement. But I do think there are many
That's great
current
to hear. I
cases
love it.
where that comes to mind. It's important to remember that in order to do genealogy, you have to back up a step and you have to have DNA, and that DNA has to be uploaded to CODIS. Given that this type of testing is
I'm
newer in the field of DNA analysis, there's not as much oversight or regulation as other DNA analysis and the CODIS database. That's regulated by the FBI. So there are groups that are working currently to develop protocols and procedures, whether it's for the lab that's doing the SNP testing or for the genealogists, in how they're developing those leads. There are groups that are developing protocols for how that should go, because it shouldn't be a secret. It's not a black box, voodoo magic, whatever. It should be available. But I do think that there are techniques. There's also what we call the familial DNA testing, which uses the CODIS database. And that has been, if you look at around the country, that has been regulated by courts across the country, whether the state is allowed to do it or not allowed to do it. And that was, probably about 10 years ago, that whole idea started. And this is where things have progressed. So
the only way that this channel is going to grow, and I urge everybody here tonight, the only way that this channel is going to grow is on the non-Idaho streams, that you come see this channel, you come see this show. You have to be here and show up. That keeps this channel active. When I do streams that are not non-Idaho, I've been following the Rex Heuermann case. You got to show up for those streams. Everything can't be Idaho, but when you show up for those other streams as well, YouTube sees this channel as being something that needs to be pushed. It needs to be talked about, and that's why it lands on the homepage. But you got to show up for those streams. Everything, just because it's not Idaho in the title, there's still great content. You're still getting the same creator. But you got to show up, and you all are missing out. I always say you're missing out on those other streams. We have some of the craziest times on those streams. When those smaller streams happen, people just open up, and we get all these different stories, and we get to really know each other when we get in those smaller streams. I know it's hard when I have the big streams and the chat is going. I try to pull up as much as I can, but I urge everybody here, please come here on the non-Idaho nights. You're missing out on great content. We have some really fascinating stories that we cover. And who knows, I might slip a guest in on one of those shows and you miss out. You miss out on the live. So, and I'm working on some other things right now. I've reached out some other people that I'm trying to get here on the podcast as, you know, a guest. So I'm working behind the scenes to try to make some of that happen. And, you know, you never know. You never know. A lot of these people have busy schedules, and, you know, some of them just may not do lives. So I'm trying. I'm reaching out, trying to make some contacts, make some contacts and get this channel pushed out there. Mary Lynn, thank you so much for the $1.99. Appreciate you so much. All right, let's finish this up, and then we're going to go to Mr. Handsome himself, Peter Tragos, the lawyer you know.
I do think that using family members to find someone's DNA, because we know that DNA is shared, I think that it's not a new concept, but I think it's going to become more prevalent. Marcy. And especially in a case like this, where you have 4 college students who were killed, and there was a piece of DNA evidence at found at the scene where they could do some advanced testing on it.
Bryan Kohberger's lawyers will certainly argue that there was a rush to judgment in this case. They've also hinted that they will question the qualifications of some of the investigators involved. Moscow is a college town that's very small with a small police department. Bryan Kohberger remains in the Latah County Jail held without bail. He'll be back in court August 2nd for another hearing.
All right. And I'm going to be covering Taylor Shabusiness. I have probably a stream planned. I may do that tomorrow night to catch up on the case. That's going to be a really crazy stream. I've seen some crazy stuff coming out of that. So tomorrow night, I think I have that one up planned. Let me take a look. Tomorrow night I haven't even dropped it yet. So I'm going to either go back to Rex Heuermann or Tanya Shabusiness tomorrow night. All right, let's see what Peter Tragos had to say about the legal documents today. Let's play it.
Was filed. It was actually filed yesterday, July 24th, which was the deadline. So we're going to look at that and discuss that. That's actually very, very interesting, and a lot of different things you can take and learn from that alibi filing. So we're going to get to that. But first, it's going to be the DNA evidence, the allegations of it being planted. I want to answer your questions there. I want to go through what you think about it, because it's really going to come down to a lot that we still don't know, but whether or not it is potentially material to the defense. And that's really what I think is really important about this discussion. So before we jump in, hit that like button. So anybody else that's out there that's waiting on this video, it'll pop up on their homepage on YouTube so they can come and join us as well. So we can kind of talk through these two.
The likes and comments are the most important thing that gets this stream out on the homepage. It's very important.
Major Kohberger issues together.
Membership.
And then at the very end of the video, for anybody that wants to stick around, we are going to announce the winners of all of those 250K subscriber giveaways. I've got a full list of everyone's name that won. So if you want to stick around, if you tried to win any of those, if you're a subscriber, then you had a chance to win. So let's get to it here. So where did we even get to this potentially planted DNA evidence? Well, it's been referenced in some of the filings, so I want to bring one of them up. This is the reply in support of the motion for protective order. The state trying to protect or stop Kohberger from getting some of this DNA evidence, specifically the IgG information and how they built the family tree and how they got to Kohberger with the DNA. So let's read this paragraph first to start. As best the state can tell, the defendant is not asserting that B or C apply to the IgG information, and B or C reference above. This is the only way they can get the information.
We got it.
A is our material to the preparation of the defense. That's the big question we're trying to answer. B and C are intended for use by the prosecutor as evidence at trial. Seems like they're not asserting that. And even if they were, the prosecutor is saying categorically that is not true. Or C was obtained from the defendant or belonged to the defendant. It doesn't seem like they're asserting that either. I would agree with the prosecutor. The main argument for the defense is that this is in fact material to the defense. Therefore, presumably, then the defendant was attempting to show how the IgG information is material to the preparation of his defense when he asserted that someone other than the defendant may have placed his DNA on the K-bar knife sheath. So just that statement alone which they cite the actual objection there.
Oh, we got
someone
50-50
else may have
split on
placed the
poll
DNA
right
there.
now.
We know it's touch DNA. We know it can be
that poll up.
transferred from person to person or object to object.
50-50 split.
We know that Bryan Kohberger went to a nearby school. We know that he is in school even though he is older. We know that this is a party house. We know a lot of people in and out. Okay. So with all of that, I don't think that it is out of left field for the defense to argue that the DNA got there some other way than Bryan Kohberger. So the word placed, I think, has a certain intent behind it, but I can place something down or accidentally place something somewhere, so it still could potentially be an accident. All right. And that is referencing their actual objection at page 4. So that to me doesn't have necessarily a nefarious implication that the touch DNA could have gotten there some other way than Bryan Kohberger, which is true. It could have. Not saying it did, but it could have. But the state is at a loss as to how that theory supports a claim that the IgG information is material to the preparation of his defense.
Tanya,
The SNP profile used in the IgG was created from the same DNA used for the STR analysis, and the state is providing the SNP profile and information related.
Such a great soul and someone that has been through a lot in her life and has persevered. And she's got great content over there. She's got a great group of people in her chat, her subscribers, her supporters. And she's been a real friend through this process. A real friend. I mean that. Thank you, Tanya. I appreciate you. And I appreciate you being here and supporting me. All right, let's keep playing.
To the STR analysis and discovery. So it's like, it's all the same, Judge. Well, if it's all the same, why aren't you producing this? Because it's not all the same. If the defendant, and then here's the last sentence. If the defendant wishes to explore the theory that his DNA was planted on the K-bar knife sheath, he is free to do so. But the family tree created by the FBI has no relevance to that theory. So I have a lot of thoughts on this. First off, DNA planted. They didn't reference specifically where Kohberger's team said that, but they do mention that this may be a theory Kohberger's team may be going under, that this DNA was planted on the K-bar sheet. Now, it doesn't say that it was planted by law enforcement. I'm going through in my head all the questions I have, all the things people are asking me, basically boiled down to, did law enforcement plant Kohberger's DNA on the sheet? I don't even necessarily think that's being said in this motion. It was potentially placed there by who knows or what, or it was planted there again, not specifically by law enforcement. Could have been he was set up or somebody else there, or he was the driver even, and they wanted to pin it on him. So a lot of unknowns, right? But if it was placed there or planted there by law enforcement or someone else, if that is the theory of the defense or one of the theories of defense, we're getting pretty far down the road as to why the IgG and the family tree created, in my opinion, would at least be material to the defense of the discovery period. That does not mean it's admissible at trial. But if they are going to with a theory that, let's just say law enforcement planted the DNA, because that's the question I've gotten the most. If they are going with that theory, if law enforcement started the family tree with Kohberger and worked backwards, that could be material. If they did 15 family trees and not just Kohberger's, that could be material for a number of reasons. Number one, to show they weren't just focused on him. Number two, to show there might be some other suspects, which they do argue. But was Kohberger the trunk or the roots or whatever it would be, or was he a branch on the family tree based on some unknown profile? Or was his name put in first to build this family tree? Some of this information can come out in depositions. Some of it can come out in some other documents potentially. But if they're saying it was planted, if they're saying they targeted Kohberger, if they're saying that they wanted to make sure they got Kohberger, then how the family tree was built could be important. Could be. Which is why it should be discoverable. My opinion. They make arguments that you don't get everything in discovery. You don't get everything done in an investigation. And that's true.
Oh, yeah.
And I got the question.
Oh, yeah.
Well, can't the defense just say anything is their theory of the case, having no reason to actually believe that?
Oh,
and then they can get more investigation information and more discovery. Well, the defense has to actually have a good faith basis and a reasonable belief that this could be true or this could be part of their defense.
Evidentiary hearing.
Okay, so they can't
hearing.
just say it willy-nilly about anything. And when we're looking at this, what information do they have that potentially could make this a reasonable belief or a reasonable argument? Well,
thank you,
we have
Bella. I
heard
appreciate it.
that there's no other Kohberger DNA anywhere in the apartment or on any of the victims. We have also heard that there's no victim DNA in Kohberger's house, car, or any other place Kohberger was.
Savage.
We've also heard there's no connection to Kohberger and the victims. Now, none of those things make this crime impossible to be committed by Kohberger. That's happened plenty of times where there's no seeming connection and they end up committing this kind of heinous crime. But if they're saying he's never been there, no other evidence of it, this is the only piece, and the reason this is the only piece is because it was planted.
It's too late. My neighbors would be like,
that is leading down the line of at least having a good faith, reasonable belief that this is a real possibility, and therefore they need to discover potential evidence around that theory of defense, which would make it material to their defense. Bodie, Peter, where would they get the DNA from him to plant it? That's a great question.
Thank you, Victorine.
Which is why I think timing of the family tree is important. What did they have at that time? What did they gather? It's very interesting. Like the DNA stuff is very weird because it is the most damning piece of evidence.
Only 50 subscribers.
It is something in the probable cause affidavit.
We got to get there.
Even without this DNA analysis, we still have enough for probable cause. It's very strange. Who planted it is the $1 million question. Yeah, we may never know because maybe nobody planted it, right?
Oh,
Patrick, happy Tuesday. Peter and the Lawyer You Know chat. I've missed y'all lately. Missed you too, Patrick. Amber Ann, why would they pick him to plant it? Another great question, Amber. Another great question. I have no idea. Maybe. So the only thing I could think is potentially there is pressure from the outside and the victims to get somebody. Maybe they found out he drove the right car in question.
There you go.
And somehow they got his DNA or something was in the system, which it seems like it wasn't, and planted it. But I agree. I think that's a great question as well. And that's something you better believe the state's going to bring up if this is something that the defense wants to go with. Welcome to Sid and all the new members today. Melstar, anyone watching this Shaw Business trial? I have watched some of it, and actually I am doing a video tonight on it that's going to post, that's going to talk about what's happened in the trial so far and dive into deeply and answer a lot of questions about the two pleas, the two phases, the not guilty versus not guilty by reason of insanity, the differences, why it's set up like that, how different it is, if it is different from other states. So hit that subscribe button and the bell to remind you so you don't miss any videos we post.
Steve,
okay.
I can't. It's too late, right? It's too late. I'd have to scream. I can do those during the day. But I do have this.
Get into the alibi now. Okay. So now the alibi was due July 24th. And it was reported that all of the
love this shirt.
Grand jury information was going to be produced on the 21st. So that means they would at least potentially have information on the grand jury and those proceedings before filing their alibi.
16 says,
as we know, the judge granted an extension.
Good stuff. No one
for Kohberger to present.
No one has that Austin t-shirt. I can guarantee you, because this is a secret stash shirt. No one has this. I love this shirt. No one has this shirt. Oh, no one has that shirt. No one's got it. No. That's the secret stash. That's my
present his alibi until the 24th. Again, more time to gather more evidence, more discovery, more DNA information, even though he didn't get it to this point.
Carcass out of the ring.
And even the grand jury information, so they know what evidence the state presented to the grand jury at this point, I think. So let's take a look at the alibi that was presented.
You're thumping your body.
So this is the defendant's response to the state's alibi demand.
We're lost in
Because the state had to
316
demand it to
just
start
whipped
this
your
clock.
ass.
Kohberger,
Started
Bryan
the
Kohberger's
Attitude
undersigned
Era.
counsel, hereby files this
stuff.
notice in response
I don't think I
to the
can do
demand
this
for
anymore.
alibi
Whew.
in compliance of Idaho Code 19519.
Holy shit, it's bright.
So again, this does not say this is his alibi. This says this is his response to the state's demand for his alibi.
Whew, so bright.
Mr. Kohberger notes that Idaho Code 19519-4 preserves his constitutional right to silence as well as to testify on his own behalf.
Oh, I got some
We're going to
drip.
pause here,
I got some
jump
drip.
over to the Idaho Code 19519-4 so that we can see exactly what that says and how it may come into play here. Now, it's kind of hard for you to read, so I'm going to read it for you. And it's paragraph 4. This is the notice of defense of alibi, okay? So paragraph 4, upon the failure of either party to comply with the requirements of this section, the court may exclude testimony of any undisclosed witness offered by such party as to the defendant's absence or presence at the scene of the alleged offense. So what does that mean? That means if Bryan Kohberger, in this notice and response to the alibi to the state, if he does not produce the documents, the materials, the witnesses, and their testimony that are going to support his alibi that he was not there
Travis Scott
at the time
that's drip
of the offense, at the location where the offense was committed, if he
He's
does not
glow in the
produce
dark.
those
These
by
are
July
nuts.
24th, by
I
the
love
time
these.
of
He's glowing in
filing
the
this
dark.
notice of alibi, then the judge may
Travis Sixes.
exclude. He
He's glowing in
may
the dark. They're
exclude
nuts.
those witnesses. Doesn't
I
say
haven't worn these
must,
in a while.
but may. And I believe judges would allow it later, even though some people think that's unfair. But if it's a legitimate alibi and a legitimate witness that comes forward and be like, no, I saw Bryan Kohberger
Stash pockets.
walk out of his apartment at 8 a.m. that morning and he was there the whole time, whatever. You know, if some witness did come forward,
Orange
I still think
lobsters.
because this says the judge has discretion to allow it, that they still would.
Anyway,
But
back to the case.
at this point, the judge may exclude. However, the point referenced by Kohberger, this section shall not limit the right of the defendant to testify in his own behalf.
Help her out with drip.
So that right there, I think, is the part that Kohberger and his team are focused on. So we're going to jump back to their notice of alibi. And where it says he preserves his constitutional right to silence, but also to testify on his own behalf. Because regardless of what they say at this point, regardless of if they provide an alibi, the judge can block certain evidence of an alibi at this point because he didn't bring it forward. However, he is still allowed to testify on his own behalf. And why is that important? Because he can still take the stand if he wants and say, I wasn't there, I didn't do it, I was at home sleeping. That is technically an alibi that technically the defense has not noticed the state on yet. But because it's the defendant testifying, there is a carve out and an exception in the rule that they can still make that argument based on his testimony. And more. Mr. Kohberger stands firm on his constitutional right, as well as the statutory recognition of that right. Noteworthy is that an alibi,
we might hit 8,000 tonight.
quote unquote, indicates a line of proof by which the defendant attempts to show that he could not have committed the crime of which he is accused because he was elsewhere at the time.
Yeah, it's weird.
defendant's-
Like, you know, like I have very pasty skin, but I don't know. Pink plays for me pretty good. I mean, if you notice, all my graphics have turned pink too. I have the pink wall. I have the pink LTL podcast with the yellow, the neon. We got to have the neon experience, the neon dreams. I don't know. I've always been kind of drawn to that. But it's like a certain pink. It's got to be like this pink. I can't wear like a light pink. It won't look good. My skin is like too pale for that pink. But this pink, the bright highlighted color pink is pretty good. I can pull it off.
Denial of the charges against him does not constitute an alibi. But as soon as he offers evidence that he was at some other place then that where the crime of which he is charged was committed, he is.
Yeah. So essentially, you're just inserting your right to not talk. You're asserting your right to not talk. That's pleading fifth. And then you'll just talk through your lawyer. Yeah, I went back to get another one. This is from like, I think it's like 2 years old now. Yeah, I love this shirt. It's a Calvin Klein shirt. I don't know who the models are, but I love this shirt.
Raising the alibi defense. So again, this is something that could potentially be blocked or excluded if you do
It's
not
not bad.
notice the state in the time period.
I can pull the pink and black. It's not bad.
Mr.
for a
Kohberger's defense
pasty
team
white guy.
continues to investigating and preparing his case. Evidence corroborating
me
Mr.
too.
Kohberger being at the location other than the King Road house. Sorry, let me try that again.
No, I don't
Evidence
think it's
corroborating
King
Mr.
and Tyler.
Kohberger being at a location other
She
than
got
the King Road
tattoos.
address will be
See?
disclosed pursuant to discovery and evidentiary rules, as well as statutory requirements. So they still think they have certain things that prove he was
thanks,
not
bro.
there. So it is also anticipated
Good to
that
see you,
this
Katie.
evidence of alibi, may be offered by way of cross-examination of witnesses produced by the state, as well as calling expert witnesses. What does that mean? Are they going to have expert witnesses come and testify to an alibi that Bryan Kohberger was somewhere else?
Yes, it is.
To me, I think all this means is we're going to be able to prove through cross-examination and expert witnesses that Kohberger was not there. That touch DNA was planted, or it's not enough, or whatever. There's no other DNA. He couldn't have done this. He didn't have the knife. It wasn't his car, whatever. They just think through cross-examination and expert witnesses, they're going to be able to prove he wasn't there. Feels like a nothing burger and stuff we already know. But it also seems like they're not going to produce an alibi at this point, but they are still going to argue he wasn't there, which is fair. And this is how they can do it. Cross-examination, expert witnesses that, that's not his DNA or whatever, it was planted, whatever they're going to have an expert say. And then, of course, Kohberger's testimony itself, which we've been saying all along. If he is going to get up there and say, I wasn't there, that is not what becomes produced in a production of an alibi or notice of an alibi by the defendant. That would be, my wife was sleeping next to me the whole time, holding my hand. She knows I didn't get up. I have an alarm system. It beeps every time my front door opens. Check my alarm system. No beeps, no openings that night. I drive a Tesla and it shows it was parked outside my house, plugged in and charging, whatever. That would be corroborating evidence of an alibi that you were at your house somewhere other than where the crime was committed. So, no alibi outside of just the normal defense of a case. Not surprising, but interesting because they asked for more time and the judge allowed it. So tell me what you think about this. Does this change the way you think about the case? John, do a poll. Did you expect Kohberger to produce an alibi? And we're going to mean an alibi in addition to his own statements. So a poll. Did you expect Kohberger to produce an alibi? I just want to know kind of where the chat stands on this. Ashley asked, can you look into the Karen Reed case? I don't know anything about it. I have gotten a lot of requests for new cases, though. Jamie, I'm still believing that the upstairs victims were killed earlier and closer to the 4 a.m. The others were K. I don't know. I feel like in this case, I find myself saying I don't know a lot more than many other cases. Trial time, Tammy. Where can I find the day in the life video, Peter? So all of this stuff has been a little delayed. We did play a teaser to the golf video, which I can play again at the end of this video if you guys didn't see it. It's taken a little longer to edit than we expected, but here's the scheduling plan. Friday, we're planning on playing the golf video, the 250K celebration. Saturday, we're planning on playing the day in the life video. So examining witnesses. And the jury is sitting there listening, watching, taking notes, and making the ultimate decision. So you got to be careful. Shelly, can he insert an alibi later on? So that's where the may comes in. So yes, he can by his own testimony. Yes, he can by cross-examining witnesses. And he may even be allowed to produce witnesses and testimony of an alibi later if the court allows it. Now, if the court finds the defense is playing games, it's fake, they made this up, they had this information or should have had this information at this time, he can exclude it. But I think if they said the neighbor finally came forward, we couldn't get a hold of him, judge, they weren't responding to our calls, they finally responded to our calls, his next door neighbor in the apartment, they saw him there the whole time, they can hear him through the wall, whatever it may be.
I appreciate
they just came forward. The judge should allow that.
I am single.
In the interest of justice, the judge should allow that. And my bet would be he would, which again makes some of these deadlines much ado about nothing or nothing burgers, because he still could come up with one later. It's unlikely
single.
now. I will say it's a lot less likely that he has an alibi other than his own testimony now than he did 24 hours ago. Run this world. Whoops. Run the world. The murders happened right after Halloween. If there wasn't any other DNA, do you think he could say he went to a costume party and he went into the house and dropped the sheath? Sure, he could.
I'm bald.
And if they have pictures or social media posts of a big Halloween party, a lot of people there as hunters or superheroes.
I always say about guys, when you lose your hair, just shave your head, dude, and roll with it. Just have confidence. Girls are going to like you no matter what. If you have a good personality, you're a good person, women are going to like you. The fucking hair on your head does not get you a woman. Well, maybe for Peter it does. But I'm going to tell you, when he loses that hair
or whatever, I don't know what superhero has like a little knife and sheath, but
I got a receding hair.
He could.
Right here.
Yes,
too.
he could.
I just shave my head now. I don't care. It's easier. Saves me money.
Patrick, did they use lawful law and exhibits? Not yet, Patrick. Not yet. Channeling the heart, Barbara Joyce. Could Lori VD claim alibi? She did. She did file a notice of alibi. It did not work in getting her off, but she did file a notice of alibi and still lost. So just because you file a notice of alibi, just because you say you have evidence of an alibi, just because somebody testifies and says, hey, he wasn't there, then that doesn't mean you're actually not guilty. It doesn't mean you're going to win.
78.55. We could get there in a couple of days, people. 8,000. Tanya, if she's still in here,
all right.
Feel like when
I've got about 5 more minutes here for some questions. If anybody has any more questions.
Yeah, I don't care. I'm bald. I don't give a fuck.
I'm going to do 5 minutes of questions.
Whatever.
Then I'm going to announce the winners of
I came out of my mom's womb with a hat on anyway.
Some of it signed, some of it exclusive to the 250K giveaway. Can't get it at other times or places. But I'm going to search for some questions here for a minute.
No, I want to get to 8,000. I want to get to 10,000. Yeah. Five.
Freelance Kate. In most other cases like this, they find lots of DNA, don't they, at the crime scene? I don't know if I would say lots, but usually it's not just one piece of touch DNA on the sheath of the weapon they believe was used in the crime. Very unusual for that.
I bet
very unusual.
Guess my age.
Mel, if he had a proper alibi, he wouldn't be in jail. A lot of people in jail think they have an alibi or file notices of alibi.
Chat. Is Tanya still in here? Did Tanya leave? She probably went to bed.
So if expert witnesses can debunk the phone pings, he could prove that he was not in the area at the time of the murders, right? Yes. If they can look at his pings and say, look, it actually proves he was over here. That could potentially be an alibi. So that's through expert witnesses, which at this point, I don't think the deadline is passed where they have to get all the expert discovery in. So that's why they're allowed to do that later and say, actually, this evidence points that he was over here. So he can still make the argument he was not there. And that's what I think we learned from this notice of alibi, that he doesn't have some specific thing like,
I'll take all
again, his wife was laying next to him in bed all night. That would be produced in this notice of alibi. But potentially other arguments could still be coming.
45. Jessica got it. 45. I'll take 35. Damn, I love you guys. Or ladies and gents. That's awesome. I'll take 34. No, I'm 45.
All right, let's see here.
45. Yep, 45.
Yeah, it's a good question. Jay, Peter, okay, but did they also do the IgG trees
1978.
for the 3 unknown sources of DNA found at the scene? Again, this is why I think they should get as much information as they possibly can in
I've never been
discovery
married and I
to
don't
flesh
have
all of
kids.
this stuff out.
I'm a catch. And I have a good job. And I don't live in my parents' basement.
If you're innocent, you'd have some kind of alibi.
Yes,
Not
young
actually
and
true,
free.
right? That would mean anybody that lives by themselves could never be innocent. Because if you live at home by yourself and a murder or a crime occurs at night, how are you going to prove that you weren't there outside of your own statement?
78:55. Let's update the big board. It's been a while.
Brooklyn basement. BOIO released on 11/25. BK and his car. Oh, is that Bolo? BK and his car identified on 11/27, but car's year was wrong. Is it sus if the IgG tree was created after 11/27? I don't know if I would say it was sus. It's sus, but I think that if it was created before, it would make it even very difficult to say that they had the DNA to plant, right? Like some of the questions are right now.
78:55.
Chojo, Peter, is lawful law a real word? It's a real word. It's not a real legal argument.
8,000.
Peter, please cover Ellen Greenberg case. So here's what I want.
Yeah.
When you guys hear stuff like this,
single,
and you see a case name pop up, if you are also interested in it, let me know in the chat. Let me know in DMs. And that's how we will continue to pick up steam and realize that there's enough interest, that enough people would be interested and engaged and involved and being educated and helping educate us and having your opinion involved in the case. That's the only cases I want to cover, are the ones you guys are all interested in and want to be a part of. So if you see a case name like this pop up and you're also interested, let me know in the chat.
Tsunami.
Shelly, Peter, what do you think is the likelihood of him providing testimony in court? See, I don't know. I don't know yet. I don't know. I feel like he would want to.
I'm a new member. Thank
but
you. Welcome to
as how it's been going so far in the case, it would indicate he's not going to. I don't know. And I feel like a lot of people on the outside and a lot of the public are like, oh, there's not enough evidence. They can't prove it. There's just nothing here. It's just touch DNA. So if the defense kind of agrees with that and they think the state doesn't have enough to prove this case, then he's not going to testify.
Yeah, he's I mean, even Peter thinks so. I know, 21:45. It's a long way to go in the YouTube world. It's a long way to go.
Selena, how unusual is it that convictions can be made on circumstantial evidence alone or only? It's actually very common for cases to go to trial on circumstantial evidence and people to get convicted, but not all circumstantial evidence is equal. Angie, Peter, is it normal that he did not file an alibi, or do you think the defense is stalling? I don't think they're stalling. I think he just doesn't have a traditional alibi, like I've been kind of explaining. Ashley, isn't it crazy how much more info we have on Rex, the Long Island case versus BK? Yes, that case has been around for 13 years.
13 years.
But that seems to be a mountain of evidence.
Yeah, that's gonna get wild.
Burning Queen, is it possible that the state has definitive proof proving Bryan was there the night of the crime? We hear there is not DNA in his car, but could the state be holding on to the DNA they actually found?
It's all right.
Well, they could be holding on to a lot of things because, as Ashley just mentioned, we don't know a lot in this case. There's a gag order.
Here.
There's hearings that are happening under seal, filings that are happening under seal. So I will never say never on this case because there's just so much we don't know.
And then you're gonna do his laugh. Then you're gonna do his laugh is it's that fucking his laugh is just kind of like fuck everybody. He has that laugh. I'll see if I can find a video.
All right.
I'll probably get plucked for playing it.
So if you guys have more questions, we can keep throwing them in there, but I'm going to now put up the winners of the $250K giveaway. And we can run through these. John will post in the chat the link for this. So if you go to thelawyeryouknow.com page and you click 250K celebration, it will pull you up to this. And you can kind of see each individual item and who won it. The Peter socks was Gloria, autographed Adidas Polo, large gray. Ashley. Oh, Ashley's been in the chat. Aaron. We're learning about the process. We're learning about.
All right. I'm going to kill that. Thank you, Peter. We always love your expert opinions. We always love your expert opinions. All right, let's do this. I want to pull up Bezos' laugh. It's just I have all the money in the world laugh. Listen to this guy. He's like,
Not
you fuckers.
but you do gonna like that.
You fuckers.
Not to
But you do need to follow your
that laugh.
I'm not sure my boss is gonna like that. Not to
I get all the money in the world. Let's see if we can get another one. Where's this laugh? Right there.
I'm scared.
Under siege.
This guy. He's like, what's that? The guy from what the hell's that guy? Is it Superman? Is it Lex Luthor? Lex Luthor from Superman? He has that laugh. No, that's not a nervous laugh. That's the I got all the money in the world. You fuckers. Oh boy. All right. Well, we have hit an hour and a half here on LTL Podcast. I'm going to shut this one down. Let's look at the poll really quick. All right. So tomorrow night, we're going to do Long Island Serial Killer. I'm going to post the link right now. Right meow. Right meow. All right. Let me change it for tomorrow. Tomorrow's what? Tomorrow's Wednesday? Wednesday day. 9:15 p.m. We'll give Tanya a little space so she can do her show at 8:15. And don't run out of the room yet. Everybody's running away. Let me drop the link here in a minute. Give me a second. Right meow. All right. Let's list that out. Public tomorrow night. Long Island Serial Killer. I'm going to drop the link for tomorrow night's stream in the chatty chat. Be there or be square. And then tomorrow during the day, I think I'm going to go live if they go live with the Taylor Shabusiness trial. If not, I'll put some stuff together. What time am I going to do that one? Let's do that one at, maybe I'll do a morning stream. I haven't done a morning stream in a while. Tomorrow, I'm just trying to think what I have going on. How about I do what time tomorrow? I'm not sure yet, but keep an eye out tomorrow. I'll probably have a pop-up if they go live in the morning with the court live. I'll just go live to the court and I'll play it. You guys can come in and hang out if you're not working or whatever you're doing. I'd love to have you over here. I want to thank everybody this evening for coming back, checking out the channel. Without all of you, this channel cannot go round. And I want to welcome all the new members to the channel. I may pop up tomorrow in the morning and do a members only. I don't know. I'm going to do some streaming tomorrow. I'm off from work and I want to stream. I want to fucking stream. So I'm going to do that tomorrow. I'll think of something. Probably Taylor. I said Tanya. Why did I say Tanya? Taylor Shabusiness tomorrow. Sometime during the day. I'll do a pop-up. Maybe a lunchtime stream. Maybe a noon stream tomorrow. So I can get over my my audience overseas. So look out. If you all want to come over and hang out tomorrow, you can. If not, I'll be back tomorrow. Long Island Serial Killer at 9:15 Eastern Standard Time, PM. I'm Bryan. This is the LTL Podcast. I appreciate you all being here. I appreciate all the new members. I appreciate all the new subscribers that came into the chat. We have fun. We're at 7855. I'm very close to 10,000. Let's get to 8,000. You all know how to get in touch with me. You can email me if you would like, or you can contact me through the Twitter. Here's my email. Here's the Twitter. Yeah, thanks, Bella. Thanks for being here. Did you just have a baby? You had a baby, didn't you? Is that a baby? Did you have a baby? Didn't you say something about having a baby? Well, if you had a baby, congratulations. That's great. Is that a baby? Oh, she had a baby. She had a little baby. Boy or a girl? No, I just kind of do my thing. I wish those guys the bestest of luck. They have their show. I do my show. I'm just focusing on things over here on LTL. Is that a baby? I don't know. All right. Well, congratulations. Thank you, baby girl Sophia. That's a beautiful name. She said in 8 weeks. That's great. I love it. That's a beautiful name. Sophia. That's a really great name. Congratulations. So Lisa says, I was my mother's personal caregiver and I just lost her recently. So I'm out of a job. But as soon as I get a job, I'll become a member. Love your channel. Appreciate kindness. Lisa, we're so sorry for your loss. And, thank you for sharing that. I'm sorry. I'm my mom's caregiver as well. And those times are tough. I understand. So let's give Lisa some prayers. If you pray, let's keep Lisa in her prayers. Let's give her some prayers in the chat. Yeah, it's really terrible. Don't get me emotional before I go off air. But listen, I want to like I said, I want to apologize to everybody last night. It was unprofessional for me to stop the stream, and I will make sure that I do not do that any time in the future. But with that being said, I think we're going to end the stream tonight. All right, ladies and germs, be good, be safe. I'll be back here at 9:15 Eastern time, p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And tomorrow I'll end up doing something during the day because I know I'm going to be bored during the day and I'm going to want to do something. Maybe I'll jump over with Tanya. If she's live, I'll jump over there. I don't know. We'll figure something out. But you all be good, be kind. You know how to get in touch with me. I'll see you all tomorrow. Be safe. Bye.